So welcome to the St. Johnsbury Chrysler Dodge Jeep Rams Outdoor Edge, broadcasting across the Northeast Kingdom in the North Country of New Hampshire. I'm your host, Joshua Smith, and we've got another packed episode for you. We're diving deep into deer season in Vermont and New Hampshire. Earlier this week, I had the chance to talk with Becky Fuda, the deer project leader for New Hampshire Fish and Game, and we got into the nitty-gritty of what hunters can expect this fall. Plus, Gary Moore caught up with Lieutenant Mike Scott from the Vermont Fish and Wildlife to cover the Vermont side of the season for his thoughts on the out of door segment. And as always, we've got your Outdoor Edge forecast with Mark Breen from the Fairbanks Museum. So cozy up to the radio, grab your favorite evening beverage, and let's get started. We're excited to have back with us here in the studio the deer project leader for the New Hampshire Fish and Game, Becky Fuda. Becky.
Hi.
How you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. How are you?
It's exciting because you were the inaugural guest last year when we reintroduced the Outdoor Edge show. And you were back on last year, it was around September. But now you're on here for our November episode, which seems to be more in line in some of the topics that we're going to be talking about, which is deer.
Yeah. We got muzzleloader starting on Saturday, November 1st.
Okay. See, look at that. Yeah. And so one of the things that are different from last year is that you guys changed some rules last spring for the fall, correct?
Correct. So we have expanded opportunity for harvesting antlerless deer. So those are going to be your either sex days. And we've expanded that in 19 out of 20 units in New Hampshire because all of our units in the state are now at or above our population objectives for deer. And so we're just providing additional opportunity for hunters to harvest antlerless deer. One of the other big changes that hunters are probably aware of or should be aware of is that we've expanded the use of crossbows during archery season. So formerly you could only use them in units L and M, which is down in the southeastern portion of the state, down by the seacoast. But we expanded that this year so that you can now use them in 12 out of the 20 units. So basically, all units except the White Mountains units and the units to the north of the White Mountains. So that those are going to be units G2 West, and then all the units that are G through M.
So remind our listeners when you mention units, those are just the geographic areas inside.
Yeah, so there are wildlife management units, and it's how they're the areas that we use to manage deer. So each unit has its own population objective and its own regulations in terms of when you can harvest antlerless deer in particular, and sometimes other differences such as whether or not you can use crossbows during the archery season. Okay.
Was there any other key rule changes or permit adjustments that hunters should know about?
There were a few more minor things. In Unit L, where we issue special antlerless permits, so additional tags for harvesting antlerless deer only, we did increase the number of permits from 3,000 to 3,500. We also had a regulatory change. From now on, hunters are required to keep their confirmation number with their license or to write that confirmation number on their license. And so that's the number that you get when you harvest a deer and you register it. So we just wanted to make that really clear what hunters should be doing with that number, and it makes it easier for law enforcement to be able to confirm that somebody has registered their deer.
So I know doing some research that the 2024 deer harvest was 12,277, which was the 12th highest since 1922. What does that tell you about the herd health heading into 2025?
So we've had a lot of our highest harvests over the last decade or so. The number one harvest still was back in 1967, so we haven't quite topped that. But other than that, all the next 10 or so highest harvests have been in the last 10 or 15 years. So the last several years in particular, we've had winters with lower than average severity. And so that obviously helps our deer herd out. And so now, like I mentioned before, all of our units are currently at or above objective. And that's why we're able to expand some of that opportunity for harvesting does. So I think most of our units, I think at this point, all of our units do have opportunity for harvesting does either in the muzzleloader and or firearm season in addition to the archery season.
Okay. And I know I'm kind of curious about this too, is like one of the things that's new this year as compared to the last several years is that we've been in a drought the last several months. Mm-hmm. How has the drought or had mass crop variations affecting deer movement and feeding this year?
So the drought, most of the state is in an extreme drought in New Hampshire. I think I saw that our meteorological summer was the driest on record, going back through when records started. So that is really going to have an impact on primarily deer browse and also forbs. So browse and forbs make up the majority of deer diet, with browse being like the twigs and leaves of woody plants, and forbs are herbaceous or non-woody plants that aren't grasses, so like broadleaf plants. And so those are a really important part of a deer's diet, and as you can imagine, an extreme drought is going to have an effect on both the availability of those foods as well as the quality or the palatability of those foods. And so I can't say, we don't have any collared deer out there, so we really haven't done any studies on how that would affect deer movements, but it's certainly possible that they may need to be moving more in order to get the nutrition that they need. They're trying to put on some fat before the winter. But I will say it is sort of an average mast year, and so mast is also an important part of deer diets, especially in the fall. So we have hard mast, like acorns and beech nuts. It does seem to be a decent year for acorns, and there are some beech nuts out there as well. And of course, they'll eat soft mast as well, like apples, and there's some of that around. So there is food out there, but even when mast is available, again, they're still going to need to browse, and I'm not sure exactly how this drought and how it's going to be affecting those plants is going to affect the deer movements, but I wouldn't expect them to be, the fattest this year. They might not be in the best body condition. We'll have to wait and see. We will collect data on that at our check stations.
Right. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll be talking more with Becky Fuda, the Deer Project leader, asking about the game management plan that's been updated. So stay tuned. Welcome back. We are talking to the Deer Project leader, the New Hampshire Fish and Game Deer Project leader, Becky Fuda. And Becky, we mentioned before the break that before we started recording is that you wanted to one of the more exciting things that happened this past year is that New Hampshire Fish and Game has updated their game management plan, and that's updated every 10 years.
Yes, that's correct. So the big game management plan it's an overarching plan for 4 species. So we've got deer, bear, moose, and turkey. And in that plan are the goals that we set as sort of long-term goals. So for each management unit for each of those species, we're going to set our population goals. And, in terms of how we measure that population, we might be using an index rather than a direct measure of the population. And so again, this is something that we update only once every 10 years because it is a big project that involves a lot of time and a lot of research. We started the project, almost probably 2 years ago now. We do a whole assessment, which you can find on our website for each species that sort of summarizes all the data we have on each species. And then we did last fall, early winter, we did a public survey. And so that was a survey that was sent out to both the general public as well as license holders. And that gives us an idea of how people feel about our management programs, as well as how they feel about the population levels of each of those species where they live.
I'm kind of curious too, so you're the deer project leader. Is there a moose project leader and a turkey project leader?
Correct. Yeah. Yep. And a bear project leader.
And a bear project leader.
Yep. Yeah. And we've also got small game and pheasant and waterfowl.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Is it fun when you guys get together?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, we see each other all the time. Even though I'm the deer project leader, obviously everybody else also helps me out, with collecting data on deer. So when we do biological check stations, all of those folks are going to be out there collecting data. And when we're trapping ducks, I'm out there trapping ducks. And
Right. Yeah.
So we all help each other out a lot.
Is there anything that's different when we're putting together the game management plan? Anything updated?
Yeah. So we didn't make a lot of changes to the deer objectives. So in terms of the objectives that are set for each unit, so that's our goal in terms of population, we did feel for the most part that we did a pretty good job of that last time in terms of where we want to see those populations. So we for the most part, except for one unit, we left those the same. And a lot of people in the public survey said that they were mostly happy with where deer populations are. Some portion of hunters said that they wanted more deer, which, isn't a surprise. And then some small portion in some parts of the state said they wanted fewer, but that wasn't very, very common. But we did decide to keep those objectives where they are because we don't want our deer population getting out of hand. There are a lot of states to our south and to our west that have struggled with overabundant deer. And so when deer become overabundant, they can have a really negative impact on our forests, which can, on native plants. It can have cascading impacts on insects and songbirds. And so we felt like those objectives were in a place where we are balancing our deer herd with the available habitat.
Right. And talk to us a little bit about the season setting. You said that you do that every other year.
Yeah, so season setting we call it season setting, sometimes we call it rule making, but basically every other year we look at our seasons and we look at where our deer population or our bear population, where they are in relation to the objectives set in each unit. And then we make those fine adjustments to the seasons to try to influence the population to get closer to the objective. And so that season setting is when we would set, say, the number of any deer or either sex days, whatever you want to call it, during the muzzleloader season and during the firearms season. So we look at that every 2 years and can kind of fine tune those adjustments in order to get those populations closer to those objectives.
Right. I'm assuming that the biggest population difference is going to be up in the northern parts of the state.
So no, not really. So the northern part of the state, White Mountains North, is going to have a lower density deer population compared to the units that are south of the White Mountains and in the Connecticut River Valley. So they're going to have by association, because the deer populations are lower, the harvest is going to be lower up there. So we see our biggest harvests in terms of density like down in the southeastern part of the state.
Really?
Yeah, because the deer densities are highest.
Wow.
Yeah, so if you look at deer killed per square mile, it's mostly the highest numbers are going to be down in those units L and M.
Because also the human population is denser.
It is, but deer can do, really well in suburban environments. Yeah. They're an edge species, and those suburban environments with yards and gardens and not very many predators and make for good deer habitat, and the winters are a lot milder. So the deer populations are obviously going to be influenced a lot more by winters in the mountains and north of the mountains. So,
okay.
Yeah. And in the mountains too, the habitat's not that great because a lot of the forest is mature forest.
Right.
So deer tend to do really well when there's more early successional habitat.
Is there other animals that kind of have an inverse effect where there's more denser populations north as compared to?
Sure, moose. Yeah, moose would be the obvious one. Yeah, right. Most of our moose are going to be north of the White Mountains.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to take another quick break, and when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more about some advice that Becky might have for new hunters and even seasoned hunters. So stay tuned for that.
It's the St. Johnsbury Chrysler Dodge Jeep Rams Outdoor Edge on YKR Country.
So where's the big deal?
Holy shamoly, it's Matt LeCire from the Autosaver Group, St. Johnsbury Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. It's the Black Friday sales event, and if you've been waiting for the perfect time to grab a brand new truck, your wait is over. Right now, you can lease a brand new 2025 Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cab for just $479 per month for 42 months with zero money down. That's right, zero money down, and you're driving one of the toughest, most capable full-size trucks on the road. With legendary Ram power, luxury comfort, and head-turning Bighorn style, this truck is built to take on Vermont and New Hampshire's toughest roads and look good doing it. So don't wait, these Ram 1500 Bighorns are moving fast. Come see us today on Memorial Drive in St. Johnsbury, Vermont, just past the railroad tracks. Check us out online at stjohnsburycdjr.com.
Leases for stock number SJR 25230. 10,000 miles per year, 35,000 total miles, 30 cents per mile over. Tax, title fees, and registration extra. Must have a Stellantis brand lease and household to qualify. First payment due at signing.
St. Johnsbury Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, where Vermont drives Ram tough.
You don't have to go far to find some fishing fun in Vermont, and this beloved summer pastime offers many benefits. Spend time with family and friends, explore new places, enjoy the outdoors, and maybe even catch some dinner. The Vermont Fish and Wildlife website offers resources to help. You can watch fishing videos to learn how, register for a free fishing clinic, or find a public access area near you at vtfishandwildlife.com. Vermont Fish and Wildlife invites you to fish Vermont.
Your website isn't working for you. Hi, this is Jay Davis, co-founder of Northeast Kingdom Online. I'm sure you've seen us online already. We've created hundreds of websites for companies just like yours. If you're ready to stand out on the internet, it's time to join forces with Northeast Kingdom Online, Northern New England's premier website design company. From security to mobile responsiveness, we handle it all. Let's make your website as unique as your business. Visit us at northeastkingdomonline.com and let's get started. Achieve more with northeastkingdomonline.com.
Welcome back to the St. Johnsbury Chrysler Dodge Jeep Rams Outdoor Edge, and we are talking to Becky Fuda, who is the New Hampshire Fish and Game Deer Project Leader. And before the break, we were chatting a little bit about some of the game management plans that's been updated every 10 years or so, and just some season settings that have happened. And now we're going to just jump in and talk to Becky a little bit about some advice that she might have for some first-time deer hunters and those that might be seasoned about it. Becky, so what advice would you give someone that's hunting for the first time?
So it's tough to narrow it down to one thing, but and this may be a really obvious one. But I guess if you're new to hunting, maybe you're not thinking about it too much. But you want to keep the wind in your face,
okay.
Because deer have a really exceptional sense of smell, and that's even if you can't see deer out there, they're probably smelling you. And so when you're thinking about where you're going to hunt for the day or the next day, say you're planning the night before, what I do is I have a few different options in my head. And I think about in terms of access, which direction am I going to be walking? Or, if people are hunting from stands, how do they need to approach that stand? But you don't want to have the wind blowing at your back, because basically that is just going to alert all the deer in the direction that you're moving to your presence before you even get out there. One other thing that I mean, obviously seasoned hunters are going to be well aware of this, but it's really nice to get out there when the ground is wet, because you can move a lot more quietly. If you go out when it's really dry, like before we got some rain a few weeks ago, those dry leaves were so loud. I mean, it was impossible to move quietly in the woods. Not that should stop you from going out, but it's definitely, if you have an opportunity to get out when it's nice and quiet in the woods, then you should definitely take advantage of it.
Right. Talking a little bit about chronic wasting disease. New Hampshire remains free of it, and your program tested 404 deer in 2024 with 0 positives. How critical is that to continue this season?
It's very critical, and I would add to that and say that it hasn't been detected at all in New England. The closest detections to us have been in New York and Quebec. Quebec was only in a captive herd. And New York had a detection back in 2005 in a captive herd, and then they subsequently found it in wild deer. But then they didn't detect it at all for almost 20 years until last year they had a detection in a captive facility again. So those would be our 2 closest detections, and we need to be very vigilant and continue testing because every year new states are finding positives. We aim to test 400 deer every year. We primarily do that through cooperating with butchers. So butchers will provide us with the deer heads, and we sample the lymph nodes that are at the top of the neck. That's how you test for CWD currently. But one thing I'd like to touch on that hunters should be aware of, especially out-of-state hunters, is our carcass importation restrictions. And so people that aren't familiar with CWD, it's just to provide a little bit of background, it's spread by what's called the prion. And that prion is a misfolded protein, and it's very stable. It can persist in the environment for several years at least. And those prions are concentrated in the nervous system of the deer. And so if you're hunting out of state in a state that has detected CWD, like New York or Pennsylvania or 30-something other states, you cannot bring back high-risk parts. So you cannot bring back a head, you cannot bring back a spinal column. It has to be deboned meat or finished taxidermy mounts. You can find the precise language in the Hunting Digest and on our website about what you can bring back. But out-of-state hunters need to be very aware of that, because that bringing back high-risk carcass parts and throwing them into the woods when you finish, processing your deer, that could be a way that CWD gets introduced into New Hampshire. Okay.
Is there any known habitat or population indicators that you'd be watching out for this season?
Sure. Well, we always run our biological check stations. So we do that the first 2 days of muzzleloader season and the first 3 days of firearm season. On those 5 days, hunters are required to check their deer in person, so they can't do it online. And the reason for that is so that we can get our hands on deer. And so we collect data on weights, antler beam diameter, antler points, lactation status for females, and we estimate age by looking at tooth wear and replacement. And so all of those metrics are things that we track over time, and we can also compare them amongst our different units in the state. And they can provide some information about the health of the herd. So, for example, if we had a deer population that was way above the carrying capacity of the habitat, we would expect our antler beam diameters to be below a certain threshold. The rule of thumb is generally 16 millimeters. Or we might expect to see a trend in average weights for a certain age class over time. So that's stuff that we track. And we do summarize all that information, and we publish it every year in our wildlife harvest summary. Generally comes out in, I think, April.
Okay. So my final question for you, Becky, is that if you could give any one overarching tip to every deer hunter listening here in New Hampshire and Vermont this fall, what would it be?
I think, everybody out there has different hunting strategies, and different things work differently for different folks. Obviously, there's different ways to hunt. You can still hunt. You can hunt from a stand. So I don't want people to, not do what works for them. But I can just provide a little bit of background on what research has shown us. And I will say that these studies have not primarily taken place in New Hampshire, but there have been a lot of collaring studies across the country. So when you put GPS collars on deer, you can find out a lot about how deer move and what affects deer movement. And what that research has primarily shown is that there are a few factors that really have a big influence on deer movement, and then there's some factors that really don't matter too much at all. And so the big factors that are going to affect deer movement are going to be time of day. As most people know, they're crepuscular, so that means they're most active at dawn and dusk. And then the rut. So the rut in New Hampshire peaks in the third week of November. So we know this from a study that we did do in New Hampshire. I wasn't here, this predates me, but back in like 2014, 2015, I think, they did a roadkill study where they looked at the fetuses from roadkill does, and based on the size of the fetus, you can backtrack to when that fetus was conceived. And so we know that the peak of conception in New Hampshire is in the third week of November. Huh. And so the rut also obviously has a lot of influence on deer movement, and that bucks are going to be moving more during the rut. And so, but you have to also think of it as a bell curve, right? So it peaks in the third week of November, but those earliest does are going to be coming into estrus a few weeks sooner, and those last few might be coming into estrus a few weeks after. But that obviously is going to have a huge influence on it. And then lastly, the biggest influence, well, not the biggest influence, but another big influence is going to be hunting pressure. So deer are going to respond to hunting pressure. If there's one area that's getting a lot of pressure, they're going to change their movements to go somewhere that's not getting a lot of pressure. Things that don't have as much influence tend to be weather. There might be some minor, influences of temperature or wind. And there's not a lot of evidence out there. I know a lot of hunters do feel strongly about moon phase or moon position, but there isn't a lot of evidence to suggest that really has much effect at all. And so I think the thing to know is to really just get out there when you have the time, because those influences like weather and moon, they're not going to have a huge impact. Make sure you're out there at dawn and dusk, and make sure you have as much time as possible out there during that rut period, because that's going to really increase the probability of you encountering deer.
We're wrapping up our conversation with the New Hampshire Fish and Game Deer Project leader, Becky Fuda. Becky, any final comments or messages for our listeners?
So just enjoy yourself out there. It's an exciting time of year.
Right. Excellent. All right. Thank you so much. And if people want to learn more about New Hampshire Fish and Game and also the Deer Project Department, what's the best place they could go to?
They can go to our website, our Facebook page. We have a YouTube, any of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Becky, it's great to chat with you again, and looking forward to we got to do this annually. See, every deer
right.
hunting season. See.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And that was the conversation I had with Becky Fuda earlier this week. And now, still ahead, Gary Moore brings us another installment on Thoughts on the Out of Doors. This time he's talking with Lieutenant Mike Scott of Vermont Fish and Wildlife about what's shaping up to be a 2025 deer season and why preparation matters more than ever. Stay tuned for that. It's coming right up after these important messages.
It's a St. Johnsbury Chrysler Dodge Jeep Rams Outdoor Edge on YKR Country.
You said this year you would spend more time outside. You said this year you would get time to enjoy summer. You said this year is the year, just like last year. Don't spend another season scrambling to fill the schedule. Northeast Kingdom Online can help you create a marketing plan that grows your business. A complete plan with a certified marketing manager that will take care of the details so you can focus on bigger things. We offer complete websites, social media, and marketing services to business owners like you. Visit northeastkingdomonline.com today for a free consultation.
You've picked the paint colors, maybe even sketched a layout on the back of an envelope, or made the playlist for your grand opening. But without a design, it's just a dream. Riverside Design Works in Bradford makes those dreams real for families and small businesses across the Upper Valley. Affordable, functional, and community-focused, we build for your needs and within your budget. But heads up, the 2026 construction season is booking fast. If you want shovels in the ground next year, you need plans today. Keep it simple. Riverside Design Works. Smart choices, reliable results.
Good evening. Welcome to Thoughts on the Out of Doors. My guest tonight is Lieutenant Mike Scott from Vermont Fish and Game. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Why don't we begin by you telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. As you said, my name is Mike Scott. I'm a state game warden. I'm the game warden supervisor called the Northeast District Chief Game Warden. And what that means is I provide supervision and help direct the 8 game wardens that make up the northeast corner of the state, working for the Department of Fish and Wildlife. I grew up in eastern Connecticut. My dad was in the Navy. My mom was a public school teacher. And at the first chance I got, I moved up to Vermont and got out of the suburbs. And I went to UVM, studied forestry, and I spent about the next 8 years working in the woods. I worked as a private forestry consultant and did some logging. And when I got the chance to come on with Fish and Wildlife, I jumped at the opportunity.
Great. So, glad to hear that. I wasn't aware about your forestry background.
Oh, I love it. I miss working in the woods every day, but it was a challenging way to make a living.
And now you work in the woods even less since you're promoted.
Oh, yeah. Well,
when you were district warden, then you spent more time in the woods than you do now, I bet.
That's right. When I was a district warden, I was a district warden for about 10 years and absolutely loved being out in the field every day, year-round. And you had lots of freedom to be out, and talking with people on the landscape. It was great. But about 2 years ago, I took a promotion to be a lieutenant, which is a lot more time behind the desk than it is out in the outside.
So your district is the northeast. How far south, for instance?
Yeah, we obviously work in Vermont. We go from Bradford in the southern end.
Oh, Bradford is the southern end of your district.
That's as far down as we go.
Fairleigh goes out of the Springfield office.
Yeah, it goes out of Central, out of Rutland, really.
Oh, Rutland.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and the state's divided up into 4 sections for the way we organize our game warden efforts. The northeast corner goes from Elmore up through Canaan, and then down south to Bradford.
Okay. All right.
Northwest part of the state.
So it's a Northeast Kingdom with a little add-on for Orange County and
that's right.
So forth.
Yep.
Okay.
And then there's a central part of the state that's organized out of the Rutland office.
Right.
And then we have a southern district down out of the Springfield office, and then the northwest is the greater Chittenden County, Franklin County, Grand Isle.
But for much of the area this station is covering, your wardens are the wardens.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Because we're in the, if not in the height of the fall hunting season, it's very close, depending on your definition of whether the Vermont holiday is the opening of rifle season or not. Anyways, how do people contact one of your wardens if they see something or want to get some information?
Yeah, they have a couple of options. The most expedient way to get a game warden on the line is to call your local state police dispatch center. So there's a St. Johnsbury Police Dispatch Center, a Derby State Police Dispatch Center. Those are the ones that most of your listeners are going to call. And you talk to the dispatch center. You're going to get put to a phone tree right away. Just press option 8, and you'll go right to a dispatcher. And just tell them that you witnessed a fish and wildlife violation, and you'd like to make a report, and they'll get the information for you. There's also an anonymous tip line that's available called Operation Game Thief. And if you just get on the internet and type in Operation Game Thief, it'll bring you to a telephone number or a web submission form where you can submit your reports to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always remind people in my column and on the radio that the wildlife belongs to everybody. Those who poach or otherwise take game illegally or even unethically they're stealing from all of us.
Oh, that's the absolutely correct way to look at it, that the wildlife is a shared resource, that hunters, fishers, trappers, they get to enjoy that resource at the will of the public. And
Right.
and it's a tremendous privilege to be able to participate in these activities. And certainly if somebody decides to go outside the rules when they're doing these activities, they're stealing from the public.
Right. And even if you're not breaking the rules, sometimes it's public perception. I like to remind people that much of the hunting we do is on private land, and we're doing that because the landowner has chosen not to post it or give us permission.
Yeah, that's
and,
right.
You know, if we park in the gate or barway and they can't get to the field, or we leave some trash, that may prevent anyone else from hunting there next year.
Yeah, that's absolutely accurate, and we have to be very gracious to those landowners. And the single biggest act of gratitude you can do is to ask permission before you go hunting on somebody's land.
Absolutely.
And, really the best time to do that is before the season, not opening morning of the season.
Absolutely.
But getting out and asking permission, and then, like you said, be respectful of the landowners. Most of our hunting access is on private land, and if we want to keep that land from being posted up, we have to be good citizens.
And it never hurts to say thank you.
Oh, absolutely.
A Christmas card saying thanks for letting me hunt on your land.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're lucky enough to get something, a package of deer steaks, for instance.
Oh, certainly.
Any way you can say thank you.
Yeah, sharing is fantastic, and a quart of maple syrup never hurts.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there's a lot of seasons open. The youth hunting season was a weekend ago. Do you know anything about how that went?
It went all right. This has been an interesting thing for us. The board, Fish and Wildlife Board, moved youth hunting weekend up into October a couple seasons back, with the idea of putting the youth out there with some more milder weather and hopefully encouraging greater participation. But actually what we saw was the reverse was true. A lot of kids are still pretty busy with school activities in October, and we saw a decrease in youth participation in the youth hunting weekend when we moved it into October. So the board recently passed a rule that's going to move the youth hunting weekend back later into November to hopefully avoid conflict with some of those school activities.
That's good.
I have not seen success numbers, a harvest statistic yet on that youth deer weekend, but conditions were pretty decent for it, and I did see and interact with quite a few successful youth hunters.
Well, I hadn't thought much about conflicts with youth sports until this past youth season, and the young man that was hunting on our property hunted Saturday morning and had to leave at noon for football because he's a football player.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of draws.
It's the first I thought about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of draws for people's time this time of year.
Right.
And school's in full swing and sports, like you said.
Right.
So yeah, I think that slows down a little bit as you get more into November, but obviously not for all the activities.
Well, in November tends to be between the fall seasons. Yeah. I think that's a good place to pause. Welcome back, and with me today is my guest, Lieutenant Mike Scott from the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department. We've started talking about deer hunting a little bit and talked about the youth season, which just completed. Also, just completed is the 4-day early muzzleloader season. We'll be talking about the later season soon, but archery season's been running since when?
Yeah, archery season opens up October 1st.
Right.
And that's been going on now, pretty steadily, which is it's a nice long season. There's a lot of opportunity for folks to be out. But this early muzzleloader season is a great opportunity for the state to manage its deer herd by reducing the number of antlerless deer on the landscape in places where it's needed.
Right.
And the Fish and Wildlife Board votes each year as to how many of those antlerless permits are allocated per region. And so it's a targeted effort to strategically reduce the population where it's appropriate.
Right. How much the habitat can bear.
Yeah, Vermont's a lot different place than it was 30, 40, 50 years ago. The landscape is much more mature forested, which really is
spoken like a true forester.
It's not the best habitat for deer. And as a lot of the old pastures have grown up, the quality of habitat's actually gotten worse for deer. Right. And the Department of Fish and Wildlife doesn't really have the ability to manage the landscape in terms of habitat quality because it is so much owned by private landowners. But we do have the ability to influence is the size of the deer herd. And where the deer herd is not thriving, the best way we can manage that is to reduce the pressure on the landscape by having fewer deer per acre or per square mile.
Yeah, there are several urban areas in the state where you can't grow any shrubs on your lawns, and the deer have outgrown their habitat.
Yeah, and the board has looked at ways of addressing that, and one of the things they're considering doing is an early archery season, which would take place in late September, specifically targeted at very small urban areas where these deer have become so abundant in and around houses that they're making it difficult, like you said, to keep the bushes in front of your house.
Right.
So think about, the greater Montpelier area, greater St. Johnsbury, where there are quite a few deer right around the developed portions of town.
Right. Yeah.
And that'll be new for 2026. That's not going on this year.
That's already been proposed?
I believe it's already been approved, yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. They're going to roll it out, I think, in a fairly measured way, just to gauge the success of it and to not get out in front of our ski tips here.
Okay. The big deer season.
Oh, yeah. Regular deer season.
Regular rifle season, 16-day season.
Yep.
Comes late this year because of Thanksgiving.
Yep, that's right. It's keyed off of Thanksgiving. It ends the Sunday after Thanksgiving. So when we have a late Thanksgiving, that regular rifle season does get pushed back.
Well, you probably wouldn't be surprised, but several people have been caught unawares this year and have mentioned to me, traditionally they'd say the second Saturday it starts, when this year it's the third Saturday because the statute says it has to be 16 days and include Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it ends the Sunday after Thanksgiving. So
Right.
Thanksgiving's late. Our rifle season doesn't start till middle of November.
Right.
This year it starts on November 15th and goes through the 30th.
Which is the third Saturday.
Is it? Yeah. It's pretty late in the year.
Yeah.
Yep. Of course, that's followed by the muzzleloader season, the traditional muzzleloader season we have, which runs in the month of December. It goes from the 6th to the 14th this year.
Right.
And unlike the early muzzleloader season, which is for antlerless deer only, that late muzzleloader season, you can utilize your buck tag if you have purchased a muzzleloader license to shoot a buck. And it's just important to be aware that Vermonters currently are only allowed one buck.
Right.
So the only exception to that would be a youth hunter who shoots a buck on youth weekend. They're allowed to have a 2-buck harvest in 1 year. But that's the only instance currently where you're allowed to shoot 2 bucks in 1 year.
Now, a question on a legal buck.
Yeah.
Is it the same during the muzzleloader season as it is during the rifle season?
Yep. So Vermont has an antler point restriction in some wildlife management units, and that antler point restriction is in effect for all seasons, as long consistent across a wildlife management unit. So, for instance, right now we're sitting in Wildlife Management Unit J2, where the antler point restriction is in effect, which means an antler deer has to have at least 2 points on one antler in order for it to be a legal deer.
Right. Whereas in much of Essex County, it can be a spike horn.
That's right. Yeah. Wildlife Management Unit E, you're allowed to shoot a spike horn deer, and then down the spine of the Green Mountains as well.
Right.
The best way to look at that map is to either look in our Law Digest magazine or go to the department website, and the wildlife management units that the antler point restriction affects are all listed and shown there.
Do you have any predictions for deer season, or anything you'd like to tell people to be aware of?
Well, we we always like to hope for the best. Everyone I talk to, I shake their hand and wish them a good luck in the deer season, knowing that not everyone's going to be successful. But our biggest concern is that folks are out there being ethical and being safe. And the last thing we want to hear about is somebody getting hurt during deer season. So, our game wardens are out in the field right now, staying fairly busy, patrolling, and largely focused on safety issues. Probably the biggest concern that we get reports from the public is about road hunting and the safety implications of that. And so to that effect, our wardens are pretty busy patrolling for road hunting activity and then also investigating instances where people do shoot from the roadways. And it's kind of a black eye for all hunters when folks choose to do that. Even just the idea of rolling around looking for deer, it really upsets a lot of folks who don't quite understand what's going on.
Yeah. Just so that everybody that's listening understands, how far from the roadway, what's the law?
Yeah, for most roadways in Vermont, you have to be at least 25 feet off the traveled portion of the roadway. So on a paved road, that would be 25 feet from the edge of the pavement, and on one of your dirt roads, it's 25 feet, essentially where the leaf litter starts on the edge of a dirt road.
But basically, it's 25 feet. So
25 feet off the roadway.
Yeah,
and
so
honestly, if I had my way about it, I'd make it 100 yards. That I try and convince people that if you first see a deer from your vehicle, it's probably not the deer for you.
Yeah. Okay. We'll pause for another break. Welcome back. And my guest again, Lieutenant Mike Scott from Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department. Mike, you want to talk some more about the hunting seasons that are open now and soon will be?
Yeah, we've talked a fair amount about deer, but there's also the bear season, which goes on, and that goes partway through the regular deer season as well. But bear season, this is the early bear season, and like I said, it continues on into the month of November. Besides that, there's a lot of waterfowl opportunities open around the region. The Connecticut River actually has quite a few ducks moving through, especially once the weather cools off. And I've been seeing geese in the cornfields that have been cut. And,
a lot of geese.
A lot of geese around. It's an awful lot of fun to hunt those. We've been talking to a lot of small game hunters, especially grouse hunters and woodcock hunters who are out, looking for those birds in the apple trees and some of the more clear-cut regions of the state where those birds really thrive. And then we have a fall turkey season as well. There's both an archery season and a shotgun season, and it's a great opportunity. In the fall, you can shoot a bird of either sex, and anybody who drives around right now sees there's plenty of turkeys around.
Right.
And they're kind of naive to the presence of hunters this time of year because not a lot of people target them. And then last thing I want to mention is the trapping.
Just don't shoot them from the road.
Just don't shoot them from the road. No, get out there and do it right. But the last thing I'll mention is the trapping season's going, and trapping is one of those activities that a lot of people don't know a lot about, but it's a real eye opener once you get your claws into it. There's so much there to learn about the wildlife, and it gives you an appreciation for the animals that are out there like no other hunting activity that I've ever participated in.
Right. Trapping is a very highly regulated activity.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And the rules for trapping got a little more complicated a couple seasons ago when the board was required to pass some comprehensive regulations aiming to modernize the trapping regulations. And so if you've not done trapping in a few years or you're new to it, it's a good idea to go on the website and look at the entire content of the rules. And then if you don't understand what you're reading, feel free to call your local game warden, or you're welcome to call me directly, and we can talk trapping regulations, which I'm happy to talk about anytime.
You mentioned waterfowl. Hunters need to be aware that we're in the Connecticut River zone, which is different from the rest of the state, and basically it's set by New Hampshire regulations, so it's same on both sides of the river.
Yeah, that's right, and it's kind of a unique situation where we get to hunt the entire Connecticut River zone, which is not just in Vermont.
Right.
If you're a properly licensed Vermont hunter, you can hunt both sides of that river, and that's a real opportunity to hunt where the birds are, wherever they happen to be. But it's correct that New Hampshire sets the season dates on that, and we follow their rules for the most part.
Well, it makes sense that a bird in Monroe in an hour may fly across the river and be in Reigate.
Yeah, that's right. It's the same birds traveling down the same flyway. Right. And you actually see quite a bit of diversity comes down the Connecticut River corridor.
Yeah.
As those birds migrate south from Canada, we've seen pretty much every species that comes to Vermont come down that way.
I've always been, I totally agree with it. There are a lot of birds here and a lot of opportunity, but it just seems to me that we don't have anywhere near the number of waterfowl hunters here that other parts of the state do, and they're missing a great opportunity.
Oh yeah, that's true. The Champlain Valley gets a tremendous amount of waterfowl hunting pressure. There are a lot of ducks on Lake Champlain, and therefore it gets a lot of attention. But that's not to say that we don't have good opportunities over here as well, and certainly with the lack of pressure that we have over here, I would say that there's a lot of opportunity for folks who are out there looking for it, and they're probably not going to be rubbing shoulders with anyone else in the marsh, is my guess.
That's right, yeah. They're still fishing.
Yeah, no, it's often gets overlooked this time of year because folks are moving on to other things, but the season for harvesting trout ends on October 31st on Halloween Day. It's the last day to harvest trout if you want to, but you can still catch and release trout in a lot of our waterways in state now. That was recently a change to allow catch and release fishing on a lot of the closed waterways. And then bass fishing continues on later in the season, and before you know it, we'll be ice fishing.
Right. And there's a lot of good eating perch that there's no closed season on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely the case. And the Connecticut River, is pretty much open year round to some sort of fishing as well.
Yeah.
So as long as the ice is not covering it up.
Right,
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I think that's a good place to pause. Welcome back again to Thoughts on the Outdoors, and with me today, my guest, Lieutenant Mike Scott. Your wards are pretty busy this time of year and going to get even busier in the next month.
Oh, yeah. No, they're definitely busy. We've got calls for service both day and night this time of year. Like I said, we were pretty busy looking after road hunters and investigating cases where people think deer have been shot from the roadways. Nighttime poaching activity is on the increase this time of year, and our wardens are out, working right through the night. But they're also doing foot patrols, looking for baited areas. And we actually just wrapped up the moose hunting season up in Essex County for the most part. We also have waterfowl patrols and small game patrols going on, in addition to not forgetting about our fishing seasons.
Right.
So they're pretty busy this time of year for sure.
We're talking about wardens now and how busy they are. I believe you have a district open in your territory that you're responsible for?
Yeah, there are vacancies in the warden service across the state. We currently have 3 folks who have just completed the hiring process and we're prepared to offer jobs to. They go through a very long training process to actually be placed as field wardens. They have to go to the police academy just like any other law enforcement officer in the state. Then they complete warden-specific schooling, which goes on for typically a month to 6 weeks. And then they go through a 7-month field training process where the warden trainee moves around the state and is lodged around the state as they train with wardens all over the place, learning how they do their different jobs at different times of the year. So
that exposes them to different aspects. If you're in the Champlain Valley, you're dealing with things different if you're in the Northeast Kingdom.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The job of being a game warden is very different depending where you are. The folks that patrol the Brattleboro area have a much different job requirement and skill set than the folks that patrol Grand Isle County.
Right.
It's just a very different place to live. And then most likely we're going to hire one more person in next spring, so probably February or March. If you keep an eye on our social media and the state's hiring website, you should probably see a position listed sometime earlier in the spring. Careers.vermont.gov, all spelled out, is the website you go to follow job postings of the Department of Fish and Wildlife.
If that 4th person is hired in the spring, does that bring you up to full strength in the warden force?
Probably not. We have a string of retirements, and we're almost always down a few warden positions just due to the delay between having folks retire and our ability to get them back replaced in the field.
Mm-hmm.
So we typically carry a couple vacancies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
At least you're only down 1 in your district.
Yeah. We miss every one of them, though. You can never have enough people.
Right.
And one thing that's changed is a lot of folks will remember there used to be a large corps of deputy game wardens.
Right.
And that's largely a thing of the past. We still have several deputies, but it's nothing like the good old days when there was several deputies per district warden. And that's largely due to the training requirements of law enforcement in the state these days. It's pretty onerous to be a police officer with the training requirements.
Right.
And these folks all have day jobs, and they
even a level 2 certification.
That's right. They have to take time off from work to make those training requirements, and it becomes too much of a commitment for most folks.
Right. Well, one other aspect of fish and game or fish and wildlife that a lot of people don't know much about is the Fish and Wildlife Board, 14-person board, they serve a term appointed by the governor and represent a county. They are the ones that make the regulations.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So we have statutes which are made by the legislature, and the legislature authorizes the Fish and Wildlife Board to set lots of the seasons and methods for which fish and game are taken. And so the board really has a lot of control, and they work at the recommendation and with the advisement of the Fish and Wildlife Department, but they really have the ability to decide a lot of things that impact what hunters and trappers and fishermen get to do each year. So what I would encourage you to do, if you feel strongly about any issue related to fish and wildlife, to contact your board member. And your board member, like you said, is 1 member per county, and their contact information, including an email address for them, can be found in the back of our Law Digest magazine. It's on page 47 of the 2025 guide. And, if there's an issue that's bugging you or something you want to see addressed, they don't get that much feedback, and it's something they wish they got more of. So I encourage you, if you got a bee in your bonnet, reach out to the Fish and Wildlife Board member and make your...
I believe the contact information is also on the Fish and Wildlife website.
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And, but we need to have more feedback. The public input is important.
Right. One last thing I'd like to mention, the listeners, that the Fish and Wildlife Department has an app you can get on your phone that gives you all the seasons and all this information. You can have it readily available anytime you want it.
Oh, it's a fantastic app. If you're looking for places to go, it's got the ability to find our wildlife management areas, our fishing access areas. Like you said, the seasons and a lot of the regulations are all included in there. There's links for buying your license and a way to navigate the rules. So if you don't have the app, it's a great tool, and it goes with you, and can help you stay between the guidelines.
Right. Well, our time is up, Mike. I appreciate you coming on. Hope to have you back maybe in the spring when we can talk about what happened during the winter and what we might look forward fishing.
Yeah, that sounds great. That and hopefully a turkey season report.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you a turkey hunter yourself?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
We won't tell you where you hunt.
Oh, no, wouldn't tell you anyway.
All right, well, thanks a lot, and we'll see you in the spring.
Thanks.
And that was a conversation that Gary Moore had with Lieutenant Mike Scott of the Vermont Fish and Wildlife on what's happening for 2025 deer season. Now, up next is Mark Breen with your Outdoor Edge forecast. Will this fall bring crisp, cool mornings or lingering drought? Mark has the outlook, and it's one you'll want to hear before you hit the woods. It's coming up after these important messages.
It's the St. Johnsbury Chrysler Dodge Jeep Rams Outdoor Edge on YKR Country.
At R&L Archery, we know it's not just about the thrill of the hunt or the size of the fish. It's about the moments that matter most, the traditions passed down from one generation to the next, and the stories told by the fire long after the sun is set. It's about the journey, the memories, and the time spent together with friends and family, because these are the moments that truly last a lifetime. R&L Archery, where every adventure begins. Come create your story.
Pumpkins glow and fires crack. Time to fix what summer lacked. Doors repaired and rooms renewed. Porches made for family food. Bachelor's crew knows what to do. Craftsmanship honest, strong, and true. Start your project, big or small, vtcarpenter.com this fall.
I'm Mark Breen. Welcome to the Outdoor Edge forecast. The darker, cloudier days of November are upon us. The weather seems pretty much on the mark. The mountaintops are appearing white more and more frequently, and even some of the hills have been dusted with a little snow. It certainly suggests a shift in our outdoor activities, whether it's getting the rest of the yard and gardens finished up or perhaps early winter preparations. And of course, our hunters are getting ready and excited for rifle season, and in New Hampshire, they're in the middle of muzzleloader season. I mentioned our darker days, so with the transition to standard time, the end of the day seems to come rather quickly. Sun setting near 4:30 this evening, but losing a little more than 10 minutes in the next 2 weeks, while sunrises near 6:30 get later by about 15 minutes through the third week of this month. In addition, November is our cloudiest month, followed very closely by December, making it that much darker. Through the middle of November, temperatures generally reach the 40s during the day, an occasional spell of mild weather returning readings briefly to the 50s or even 60 degrees, while the nights, more often than not, drop below freezing. Rain is still much more common than snow, but we do average about 3 or 4 inches of snow in the valleys and up to a foot above 2,000 feet in November, rarely staying on the ground from now through the winter as temperatures vary up and down. Currently, we're in a very busy weather pattern, frequent daily changes, sometimes changing even during the day. That, of course, makes it challenging for how to dress on any given day or making plans much in advance. In the short term, tonight's clearing gives way to more clouds on Friday, some showers later in the day. Most of those showers move out for some periods of sun on Saturday, still a few showers passing by, but a bit milder, reaching the 50s. The next system is a bit colder Sunday, a rising chance of rain showers in the afternoon, followed by colder air next week with some leftover rain showers on Monday. And then from Tuesday, Veterans Day, through the rest of the week, it'll be on the chilly side. Highs next week, 30s and low 40s during the days, 20s at night, and a few minor systems of rain or wet snow showers. To the forecast details, clouds this evening giving way to clearing, colder, lows 20 to 25 by morning. Friday, early sun gives way to increasing clouds, a passing snow or rain shower in the morning, and a rising chance of afternoon rain showers. Highs tomorrow, 40 to 45, and light southerly winds will increase in the afternoon. For Friday night, mostly cloudy, occasional showers through the evening, then diminishing, lows 30s to near 40. Saturday, a few passing rain showers, along with some breaks of sunshine. It'll be milder to start the weekend, 50 to 55. Saturday night, partial clearing, lows upper 20s and low 30s, and then Sunday, thickening clouds, a rising chance of rain more likely in the afternoon, highs on Sunday in the 40s. That's your Outdoor Edge forecast. I'm Fairbanks Museum meteorologist Mark Breen. Good luck, be safe, and enjoy our great outdoors.
Thank you very much, Mark. And that is a wrap for this edition of the St. Johnsbury Chrysler Dodge Jeep Rams Outdoor Edge. A big thank you to Becky Fuda from New Hampshire Fish and Game and Lieutenant Mike Scott from Vermont Fish and Wildlife. And of course, our regulars, Gary Moore for his thoughts on the out of doors and Mark Breen for the Outdoor Edge forecast. And remember, you can catch this episode on demand anytime on the WYKR app at WYKR.com or wherever you get your podcasts. So we'll see you out there next time for the first and third Thursday of every month right here on the St. Johnsbury Chrysler Dodge Jeep Rams Outdoor Edge. And remember, you need to get your winter tires on. If you haven't done that already, it is well beyond time to get your winter tires on. So get those scheduled. All right, thank you so much, folks, and enjoy the rest of your night and enjoy the weekend.
WTWN Wells River, W286DE Wells River.
Serving Northeast Vermont and Northwest New Hampshire since 1976. WYKR, Haverhill. It's 7 o'clock.